Stephen Miller called Alex Preddy a domestic terrorist, with Vice President Vance and President Trump promoting that sentiment and that blatant lie from their pulpits. By this point, we have all seen that video from multiple angles. We've seen it with our own eyes. Alex was not a terrorist. He was in no way an assassin. He was a U.S. citizen exercising his First Amendment right to protest ICE's lawlessness. This week, families in Eagle County, Colorado, experienced another type of cruelty that fits into this administration's playbook. They found death cards held up in the automobiles of their family members who were taken away by ICE agents. These cards, I hold one up here, have a history of being used by white supremacist groups to intimidate people of color. Death cards is what they call them. These cards found in Colorado had the address and the phone number of the Aurora ICE detention facility printed on them. Aurora is a sister city, neighboring city to Denver. Now imagine just for a second that you haven't heard from your brother, your sister, and when you finally find their empty, abandoned car, it has one of these death cards sitting in the driver's seat. I mean, this is cruelty for the sake of cruelty. And it fits into the troubling pattern that we're seeing come from some of the top officials in the White House. Now, this morning I voted against government funding that would have handed billions of dollars to DHS. Continuing to fund ICE while federal officers terrorize our cities and kill people is unconscionable.
Well, actually, we have seen white supremacist tattoos
risking their lives, serving the government,
risking their lives, they're taking lives.
You're calling them Proud Boy militia. Did you say that?
Well, I did not call them Proud Boy militia, but I think it's disgraceful that you're sitting here. I'm actually not, but I think that there are white supremacist tattoos on their
white supremacist federal officers.
Yeah, white supremacist federal officers.
Like, where are you going with this? Why would you say that?
I'm going with my eyes, ears, and logic. There have been multiple ICE agents who have white supremacist
men and women working for the federal government, risking their lives, carrying out a mandate, and they're white supremacists?
Yes, and you're a member of a cult, so I don't expect you to have
Whoa.
I think the generalizations here are a bit of an overreach.
Yeah, and let's not make personal attacks.
What we don't want is what seems to be overly aggressive, poorly executed trawling expeditions where 5-year-olds and grandmothers and people of mistaken identity and people in Target parking lots aren't getting the shit kicked out of them in an effort to satisfy Stephen Miller's bloodlust and his quotas.
So, I mean, it was always going to be like this, right? When you look at the numbers during the campaign, the sheer number of immigrants that they were claiming that they were going to deport, you were never going to be able to get to that number by arresting the worst of the worst, right? Because to get the worst of the worst, those are the people who are not showing up for court hearings, right? Those are the people who are in hiding. And so it takes investigation, it takes resources, it takes 8 to 10 man teams to go out and track these people down and arrest them. And so what you saw is very early on, you saw Stephen Miller's, there's a sort of infamous reported meeting that he had where he was screaming at people and saying, we need to be raiding Home Depot parking lots. We need to be casting these wide nets in the community. And the other thing that I think is really, the really damning thing is, for a long time, ICE prioritized the worst of the worst. Like that was who we directed our resources at. And that makes perfect sense. When Trump took office in 2016, one of the first things he did was deprioritize going after the worst of the worst and prioritize going after migrants. So people who were here seeking asylum, people who didn't have a criminal record. Biden revoked that policy, and then Trump, within his first week of office last year, put it back in place. And so they aren't targeting the worst of the worst. They are going out and getting whoever they can, wherever they can. They're going to places where, every stereotypical kind of racist asshole thinks all the illegals are, right? Those are the places where they're going.
The truth is that any politician who's talking about reforming ICE instead of abolishing ICE has no problem with a paramilitary group operating completely above the law. Other than state-sanctioned and state-funded terrorism, which is what this is state-funded domestic terrorism, there's really no function for ICE. We don't need ICE. We have law enforcement officials of all kinds all over the nation, and ICE has been around since 2003, and since that's the case, why are there still so many millions of undocumented immigrants here? If ICE was really doing its job, if they were really so efficient, then we wouldn't have this issue. That's such a big issue to so many people, particularly on the right, okay? Not to mention the thousands of ICE agents who have been hired in a very short amount of time are complete losers. They're just losers. They're Proud Boys who've been sitting in their mom's basements on 4chan, and now they finally have an opportunity to do some work. They all cover their faces because they know that the work they do is disgraceful, and they know that if their identities get leaked, it could ruin their lives. Especially now that ICE is just going around taking people's lives willy-nilly because, again, these are completely unqualified individuals. Donald Trump is not successful at mass deportation. He's violating rights. He's sending children home. He's doing all types of things along those lines. But we still have millions and millions of undocumented immigrants in this country, and that's not going to change. On top of the fact that it's completely against the financial interests of this nation, especially right-wingers, especially corporate America, especially billionaires, this administration is just not competent enough to successfully carry something like that out. So at this point, again, Democrats need to be talking about abolishing ICE or else they need to get voted out of office.